Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What's Happening Now with CNI Solutions. As always, remember to like, share, comment on this broadcast live, as there could be information not only useful to yourself or to perhaps a family, friend, or relative. Who knows? So tonight's broadcast is being brought to us by Hello Guest Screen. Hello Guest Screen, it brings you with array of different things. Hello Guest Screens is an easy way to personalize your Airbnb properties, TV screens with custom images and dynamic calendar-driven guest information with all essential information for them upon arrival. I know here at CNI Solutions, we use Hello Guest Screens in our classroom for any type of events that we're having. It works out great for us. It can be used at your business, an office, a dentist's office, or wherever, basically anywhere else, not just for Airbnbs. And they do also offer the business suite for it. Okay, so tonight I got a very special guest here with us. She was one of our guest speakers at our entrepreneur class a few weeks back. I said we got to bring you back. We got to have you on the live because the information that you have and what you do as a business is phenomenal. Everyone, please welcome Miss Demetris Curry. Demetris, welcome. I enjoy you, and I know tonight's going to be really special because you got a lot of great information. We was just talking backstage, and I tell you what, folks, y'all in for a treat. So, Demetris, tell us a little bit about Inspired for Greatness.
Inspire for Greatness. We are actually a consulting firm. We work with several different industries, but mostly in the area of wealth building.
Okay.
Wealth building, dealing with creation of wealth, sustainability of wealth, and protections of that same wealth. So we are excited to work with seniors and even children of all ages to make sure they create a wealth for themselves.
Outstanding. Mm-hmm. So where did this inspiration for creating this business come from? Why did you go there?
Well, when I first started thinking about Inspire for Greatness, I was thinking about our juveniles. I was thinking about the youth, and that's where the inspired came from. How do I inspire these teenagers to want to learn about finances, how to learn about money and things like that? But then as we continued on, we learned that adults needed the same help. We were talking to their parents. They was like, tell me about that. You told my son about that, but tell me about that. So we expanded from just working with juveniles and children to eventually working with adults all the way from 2 weeks old to 100 years of age.
Wow. So is this your first business, or is this more like, you're a serial entrepreneur?
No, actually, this is the business that started off with me in 2014. And then we sort of evolved and just kept adding on to it and adding on to it. The more relationships that we received, the more collaborations with our attorneys and advisors, we just started adding on services that we saw our family and our friends and our clients were missing. They were missing the information about, estate planning. They were missing the information about how to protect their properties from probate. They were missing the information about how to get basic life insurance or how to get coverage where they can leave millions to their families and create a legacy for themselves. So it was so many areas of the whole tree of wealth that we saw was missing. So we started to plug those areas of that really needed help with.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's been a lot of changes when you're talking about probate and wills now. I think you have to do a little bit more now. And it doesn't just automatically go to whoever you left in the will. They're saying that still have to go through probate.
Absolutely. A will by itself will still go to probate. A will by itself will still go to probate. So that's one of the things that we try to teach and say, listen, this is not the one all fits all. When you do a will and you're saying, look, I want this house to go to my daughter, or I want this house to go to my son, it still has to go reviewed by probate, by whatever state that you're in. And we cover all 50 states. So regardless of what probate it is, they have different rules, but it must be viewed by a judge. It must be reviewed in your state. How do you avoid going to probate? You must pair it with a trust. And that's where the revocable trust comes in to help pair that. And that way you could skip the process of the probate.
So I know I have a lot of family. I have a lot of friends out there who own their own homes and who talk about, I'm going to leave this to my son, my daughter, like this. And I used to always say to them, because I'm ignorant to the fact, hey, make sure you get a will. But now it's more so, hey, we need to get that irrevocable trust. So talk to us a little bit about that. What is that? And help me and our viewers understand exactly what that is.
Okay, so a revocable trust is really like an umbrella of putting all your assets in, one big umbrella. When you have a will, it sort of fits under the umbrella, okay? You can put the will in there as well, but the will just basically tells the judges what you would like to happen. It tells the courts what you want to happen, not necessarily what will happen, if
Right.
that makes sense. So let's say that, for instance, I only had a will and I had all these assets, and I put into my will that I want to leave, a certain amount of cash to my son or to my husband and so forth and so on. Once the courts actually see it, then they'll get a view of what your wants are. But guess what? They have to allow you to go through a contestment period. And the contestment period allows others to basically say, no, Demetris owes me money. I need to get my portion first. Or they owed me money for a promissory note, or either they owe me these debts and so forth. And now they get a chance to contest the will first and let the courts know first that they need their portion first. And if that's the case, then guess what? The family gets to rest after what you've actually been contested for. So it puts you in a position where someone can contest your will first, and then your family gets to rest based off of what has been submitted by someone that wants to contest your will. How do you avoid that? Well, sometimes avoiding a probate is kind of tough, you know what I mean? But what you want to do is you want to list your stuff into a revocable trust, which allows you to assign those things to your trust. You want to list those things inside of your trust so that when you do pass and you have an estate, it's already shown that it has been directed to the trust and that it's not needing to be reviewed by the courts or be reviewed by the state. So that way they don't have a portion of letting anyone contest that portion.
Okay, all right. So we got a question here. One of you says, if you don't do a will, what other steps do you have?
If you don't do a will, you don't have to do a will. Just skip all the way to a trust. Now, when I work with our teams, we pull all our attorneys together. We have about 13 attorneys and about 7 advisors that we work with very closely to get this done for our clients. But we also do things like their power of attorneys while they're living, which is their healthcare power of attorney and their finance power of attorney. Because while you're still living, someone needs to be able to help you while you're still living. Let's say that you go into a situation where you cannot talk for yourself,
right,
and you're incapacitated. That living power of attorney, that live healthcare power of attorney, that finance power of attorney helps your family and your loved ones speak for you until you're able to speak for yourself. But when you pass, so does that power of attorney. It also goes away. Right. That's why that trust to be directly under it, layered under it, is such a powerful thing. So that's why we tell our families, listen, even if you don't have a will, get a revocable trust. And when we do your packaging, we're going to throw a will in there anyway to show that you have a will, you have a trust, and you also have the living power of attorneys. You have all of your health care and your finance power of attorney and your medical directives. And your medical directives to tell the doctors what you want while you're living. I don't want to be resuscitated. I don't want organ transplant. Those type of things are important. That's all part of the estate plan. All of it, the entire process. What happens while you're living, what happens when you pass, and how to make sure your family get everything you intended for them to have without giving a portion of it to the state.
So, in our lives, our community, that seems very taboo. We don't talk about that. And I can't name one a friend of mine or family member of mine that ever said, oh, I have an irrevocable trust. I have this, I have this in plan already. I can't think of anyone. Why is that? Why do we not talk about these things, or why don't we enact on these things and make them happen?
It's really just the literacy of it all, financial literacy. Do you get the information? Are you getting those resources, right? And that's why we're here right now, to provide that resource, right? Because a lot of families don't get that resource, or they just don't know. What has been traditionally sold all around in every place you ever heard of is get a will, get a will, get a will, get a will. But you definitely need a will to at least have that to tell the courts what you want so they don't have to guess. But go the next step. Go the next step and say, okay, I have a will, but how about I not pay all this stuff on the will? How about my family get 100% of what I want them to have versus any fees coming out for it going to the state? And also here in the state of Alabama, you have a probate of a minimum 6 months. Why keep your stuff in probate for 6 months before your family can even get their portion?
Right.
So that's a time frame. Think about that. If you have a family and your children are having to pay for your mortgage because you've just passed and it's in probate for 6 months, they're paying a mortgage for 6 months until it's actually reviewed by the courts. Who is getting that burden? Your children are getting that burden.
Wow.
They're getting the burden of paying for your property taxes. They're getting the burden of paying for your mortgage. They're getting the burden for keeping your utilities going. All of that is a burden that you put onto your children to keep the house going until the courts can view your probate case.
Right.
Why do that when you don't have to? So really, I try to make it as simple as possible when I'm talking to a client. I said, listen, a will is a piece of paper. A trust is a piece of paper. You just choose which piece of paper make more sense.
Makes sense.
Does that make more sense to you?
So do you think the reason why our community and so many people in our community are not engaging in that is because besides the fact of financial literacy of it, but do you think it's because of the finances of it as well?
It could be. It could be. Some of the things, one thing about having a trust, it does cost more to get a trust. But what costs more than that? Giving a percentage of everything you own to the state.
Right.
You decide on whether it makes sense to do 20, 30, 40% to the state, or does it make sense to pay a one-time lump sum and get it done with? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the lump sum is not as large as you think it is. It depends on where you are in each state. It can vary. And you may just want to do like a small package, or depending on what your assets levels are, and you may end up having to put levels in there. But it's nowhere near the cost that you're talking about doing as far as giving up a portion of your assets to the state. So that's something, we do it on a case-by-case basis to look and see where we need to plug all the exposures. But we also find there's other exposures. My brother, for instance, is special needs. Some families want to leave money to their children that are special needs, or to their adult children that are special needs. One of the key points that we found is that if you leave money to your child or to an adult child that's getting SSI directly using their social security number, you can impact their social security being turned off.
Oh, wow.
And that's major for a lot of families that are trying to leave money to maybe a special needs child that maybe have, all kinds of things. They can be slow, or maybe was born with a slight retardation, something like that. If that's the case, how do you leave them money for caretakers? How do you leave them money for those kind of things, to be in a group home? How do you do that? One of the ways that we found, and we've talked to a lot of our attorneys about it, is that there's addendums that we can put into your trust to allow that money to roll to that special needs adult or child where they do not affect their SSI.
Right. Wow.
So those are things that what we found in the hurdles in the community, in our community, of people wanting to leave money to special needs and things like that, but can't or don't know how to make sure it doesn't affect their SSI. That's another aspect of it. But normally it has to do with people not knowing how much it costs and what it's going to, how much they got to do to get it done. And that's why we walk them through them piece by piece. And we'll let them know based off of what their finances are and exactly what they're trying to cover, if it's going to cost them something like this or like that, but barely even or close to what they're paying to the state in the state plan.
Wow. Folks, I hope you all are getting it. We got another question here. It says, can you move the cursor? It says there, how pricey is a trust?
It varies from state to state. It
varies?
It varies from state to state. And it also varies on what all they have to add into it, right? So you're talking about, I've seen some prices as low as $3,000, and I've seen some go up as high as $12,000. And I think that's ridiculous. I'm just saying, I think that's ridiculous. But the cost itself can vary based off of what's needs. If you need to put an addendum in there for Social Security for special needs, that is an extra cost because that's something they have to file with the government, right? If you are a person that have multiple properties and maybe 10, 20, $30 million worth of assets somehow, of course, they're going to have to put in some extra layers there, right? So it just really depends on what the situation is. But on a basic level, you do not have to pay $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 to get into a trust. Okay, you can really do much lower than that and still get the exact same coverage that you have. So that's why when we sit down with the client, we want to see what their situation is. And most of the time, they only need standard, and we set them with what they need. We don't overprice them with anything they don't need. Just give them just a standard of what they need to knock off all the checkpoints that will give them the coverage that they need. And as time goes on, and we do their annual analysis, if they need more help, or maybe they need to add on things or things of that nature, we don't even charge them for the additional add-ons. We just show them, hey, this is how you do this. Sometimes attorneys like to charge $300 to $500 an hour for add-ons per hour. Yeah, every hour, $300 to $400, $500 per hour for changes. because we worked out, situations with our attorneys, they don't charge that. They actually help them with those changes and updates at no additional cost. So those are the kind of things that we try to make sure we help the community in, to knock down those costs that can come later that people are afraid of.
So I want to add on. I know we got another question up here.
Okay.
We says here, this is so important and informative. Yes, dear, you are right there, Chris. We appreciate that. So let's take the average person who is trying to live the American dream. They just got their very first house. They was able to save up money to get their 10% down, and they got their first house. And they say, you know what? They're listening to this program. They're watching. They're listening to what Mr. Demetris is saying, and they're hearing Charles like this. I need to get one of those trusts in place for my family, my kids, so my house doesn't go to the state. I want them to have everything. But I don't have $3,000 or $4,000 to pay for this right now. What does someone like that do in this case?
The first thing I would tell them to do is, let's start getting you off with what you need right now. Let's get your power of attorneys in place, your healthcare power of attorney. Let's get your financial power of attorney in the event that you were to get sick while you're living. Because if you have a home that you just purchased and you are a person that brings money into the household, if you're in a position where you cannot do what you normally do, incapacitated or in a hospital, or just in a situation where you have a stroke or a heart attack or whatever, and you need someone to come in for you, first and foremost, let's get what we can do now to cover you in your healthcare power of attorney and your financial power of attorney. Let's get that in place. Let's look at your medical directives. Let's get your medical directives in place so your family know what your medical needs are. And let's review your portfolio of what you currently have in place. If you don't have anything in place right now, let's get some things in place. Okay. Let's look at your life insurance. Let's see if your life insurance have living benefits to give you an income stream in the event that you're unable to do for yourself. Okay. Right. So we're talking about building blocks here. If they're not in a position to actually go in and do a trust, let's work on the building blocks of, I got my healthcare power of attorney. I have my financial power of attorney. I have a life insurance policy, but my life insurance policy is not just for me to die. It's also for me to live. So if I have benefits built into my life insurance, how can that help me? It can actually allow you to take money off of the death benefit if you get a major diagnosis. Right. It allows you to cash in. I just had a client just 2 months ago. I wrote her policy 6 years ago. And she said, Miss Curry, I knew you brought me a policy and you told me it was robust. I had no idea what it all had in there. But she called one morning and said, Miss D, I've been diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer and I don't know what to do. I am the breadwinner of my home and da. And I said, wait a minute. I know you're calling me just to tell me what's going on, but do you remember that policy I wrote for you 6 years ago? She said, yeah. I said, well, I'll tell you what, let me check on something for you. Now, I already knew if I wrote the policy, I put the benefits in there because it's something I always do. But I said, let me just call the company and tell them what your diagnosis is. And let's see if we can get some of this money off of your policy. Now, she's not dead. She is still living. So I said, well, let's look and see. And we were able to do that. We were able to cash in a good amount of money off of her policy for her to pay for her chemo treatments and all these other things on top of her Blue Cross Blue Shield, that her co-pays were so big and her deductibles was too high. And so I said, what are you doing to put that money? She said, I don't know. They're doing very aggressive chemo on me right now, and I need some money. And so you never even got to the revocable trust yet. You're still living.
Right.
You're still trying to figure out what to do while you're living. The revocable trust is if you die. So let's make sure while you're living, you're also good. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And so I said, let's get that together. So in doing so, they sent her a nice 6-figure document. And they said, hey, sign right here. You're going to take this portion of your death benefit off. And they gave her a nice 6-figure lump sum.
Wow.
Off of her life insurance. And guess what? She is doing her aggressive chemo. She's doing very well. But she didn't know she had that benefit built in because she said, D, I trust you, just write it. And I said, that's okay. I get it. D. I trust you, just write it. You're going to take care of me. But and we did. We took care of her and her husband and all her kids and everything. But she didn't know what she had. It's important to know what you have. Look and see what you have. Let's do an analysis to see if you're okay. And if you don't have a game plan together with what happens if get sick, let's say right now, if you were to get sick today, and you're not able to run CNI, and you're not able to be here to do all the different organizations. You do so much for the community, right? Your presence is so needed. But if something was to happen today and God said, I need you to sit down for a while, you need to be able to look at your account and say, this right here is going to pay my bills for 6 months,
Right.
for 12 months until I can get back on my feet. And if you don't have that in place, that's part of the plan. That's part of the plan. And so now when you say what to do, it's a step-by-step building block. Now you got those things together. Let's talk about protecting everything you just put in place. So now you done built up to a revocable trust. Does that make sense?
Right.
And now we got a will in place. We can do a will at any time, but that part goes to probate, right? But now we're going to add on that umbrella over all of that. And now you got your life insurance, you got your living benefits to take care of you, you got your power of attorneys and all these things in place, right? And now you have something to say, I've done well, I've worked hard, my house is now protected, it's going to my kids through the trust. Now if I get sick and I can't work, now I got an income that's going to pay me while I'm sitting down on my feet trying to recover. Most people, and this is our community, we'll work till we are sick because we can't take off.
Right.
But that part of this education right here is putting things in place where you ain't got to work till you sick, where you can take care of yourself and recover your body where it needs to be, so you can be here longer to teach your kids and your grandkids and how you made it over. And you understand where I'm going with this?
Right.
And so all of that is part of the process. I learned this not just in going to college and not just being in school and being the right hand of CEOs. I learned this because my family went through it. And, being the family that had to help bury a loved one, a grandfather or uncle and all this stuff, and how bad it was on us.
Yeah.
How bad it was on the people that was left behind to take care of that burden.
I definitely want to touch on that. We got another couple questions up here.
Oh, okay.
It says, at what age should you start building a block? Start building your blocks. I think
Your building blocks. At what age should you start your building blocks? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if they are a young adult, I started my son's building blocks when he was 2. As a parent, I started his building blocks. Let me tell you how I did that. I took $50 per month and I wrote him a policy. And in that policy, instead of me putting money into a 529 plan, which is an education only fund, I wanted to build him into a account where no matter what he decided to do in life, whether it be military or follow his dad's footsteps, military, that he could do that. If he wanted to create his own first time, business or be a first time home buyer, he could do that. So I put money into an account for him as a building block. That money divides up into 2 pieces. Part of it goes to death benefit. The other part goes to an aggressive savings account paying about 6 to 7% interest, compound interest. Okay. Now, when he gets to 18, 19 years old, that money is now there. I've been putting $50 a month into at 6 to 7% interest, and now he can withdraw without any tax implications. So now he is now jump started on having something put aside for school, for college, for being able to buy his own home, things of that nature, where he can start borrowing from himself, right?
Right.
As parents, we can start building blocks for our kids early. Now, if you have not had the chance to do that and you are like of age, maybe 18, 19, perfect time to do it. If you're in your 30s and 40s and you haven't done it yet, don't worry. We know how to help catch you up on that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We can build it out and structure it to help you catch up on a little bit of time, right? But you still get that compound interest. So the main thing is learning how to use compound interest to your benefit. And you can do that in your life insurance. You can do it in different products, but make money while you're sleeping. You ever heard that term? Make money while you're sleeping. These particular products allow you to make money while you're sleeping because the compound interest continues.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Got another statement here that says, we put so much focus on the now, we never take time to focus on the what. Yeah, that is something. That is something. I like so that. True. So we talked about 2 years old, we talked about 18 is the perfect age, we talked about 30, yeah, you still could do it, but is there such a thing where it's too late to do anything?
No, we just have to structure it properly. So everything is customizable. All right, so like I told you, my oldest client is 100 years old. Literally.
Right.
Literally. And we've done things for her where in her mind was, hey, I don't know how long God's gonna keep me here,
Right.
but I want to make sure that everything rolls correctly. And we work with her on taxation. You know how when you're in your 60s and you're getting ready to retire, in your late 50s and your 60s and your 70s, and you want to say, how do I look at things that helps me more taxable? How do I keep things as low as tax as possible? And that's when we bring in our finance team to look at your whole scope of your Social Security and what all you're doing, exactly how much you got paying out for this. Are you now making income off your RMDs, what they call a required minimum distribution? Are you getting required minimum distributions? Are you there? We look at what stage you are in life. You got the teenage stage, you got the 20s, you got the 30s, but depending on where you are in your stage. Then we're going to look at your finances. Do you have discretionary? Do you have anything put to the side for emergency? How do we help you create that? We even make suggestions about moving from one account to another account to get you some compound interest. Okay. We make those type of suggestions, things that they can do on their own. We just say, hey, if you're making 0.123% on your savings account, move it here where you can get it for 4%. Or 5%. And we just make, hey, here's a suggestion. Here are a list of locations that will pay you higher on your money that you got sitting in your savings account. Now you can actually see a compound deposit come into that account every single month just from you letting it sit there. And I always tell my team, they laugh at me when I say this, don't be pimped. Don't be pimped into actually sitting your money somewhere where you say, oh, I've always been with them. I've been with them 20 years. But in that 20 years, have they really done well by you? Could they have offered you a better opportunity to get higher interest on your savings or higher interest on your money market account? So maybe they're not the right fit no more. Maybe we need to look at something different. So it just really depends on the age range of where they are and their lifespan. And then we make suggestions off of that, especially when it comes to working with your taxation, your where you want it to be, compound interest, and also what that money is supposed to do for you. What is your end game? And once we know your end game, we can make a structural suggestion.
Okay. All right. Got another question up here. It says, what putting the house bank accounts, what putting the house bank accounts, any other assets into the person or persons that you would like to leave the house or money to, would it be wise to do it now while they're living instead of them trying to negotiate through once they have passed on?
That is a really good question. So, and I'm glad that you asked that question. The reason why I say that, when you put your children or maybe your siblings onto your bank account, that means you're listing them as like a joint, a Social Security, right? In the event that they are to go through a divorce, a lawsuit, or bankruptcy, okay, their Social Security number being listed on your accounts also comes up in those skip traces. So let's say that Mama Joe decided to add on her son, and his marriage does not work out. Well, guess what? When the divorce attorney looks by his Social Security number, they're going to see all of the things that is associated with his Social Security number, including Mama Joe's bank accounts. Okay. So now Mama Joe is in this position where she has to explain and try to make sure the courts understand that this is my money. I just put my son on here just in case I run into a situation and I need him to get to some money. Bad call. Do not put your kids on your bank accounts. Do not put your children and all these other people on your bank accounts. If you want them to be able to handle your monies while you're still living, that's why that power of attorney comes into place. Financial power of attorney. They can make transactions for you in the event that you cannot talk for yourself, but they're not responsible for that money if they go through a lawsuit, a bankruptcy, or divorce. Because you do not want part of your money taken in a divorce. Your money you meant to leave to your son. You don't want that money being taken because he's going through a divorce. You don't want that money to be completely wiped out if he files for bankruptcy.
So I get that, and I think what the viewer might be talking about is, Charles Fry has $500,000 in his bank account, and if Charles Fry passes, no one has access to that bank account now. And I wanted my sons or my kids to be able to get that $500,000 that's in my savings account.
You talk about an event that they die,
right?
So that's what you call a payable on death.
Okay.
So you can, on a checking account, savings account, things like that, you can list what they call a POD,
All right.
payable on death, and that will allow that money to go to them in the event she was to pass.
Got it.
Directly.
Got it.
Okay. So same thing as a beneficiary. You know how you have beneficiary
Right.
life insurance? They just call it POD on checking and savings and things like that. But same concept. You can actually add a POD onto your checking and savings that only pays them that if you were to pass.
Okay.
Yes.
So they basically, if you add me as your POD
Mm-hmm.
and you pass, I basically have to take your death certificate to the bank, say, hey,
Yep.
my mama just passed.
Yep.
Here's her POD. And they'll go ahead and transfer that money to my account or give me a debit card and for that account to be able to manage it from that point.
They end up processing the death certificate and they will end up having to transfer that balance into another account that is paid for you.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Viewer, I hope that answered your question, and I hope I rephrased it right for you. So, this is really all interesting because I was not unaware of POD, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
In my mindset, I was thinking the same way. I'm going to have to be able to I was thinking, I'm going to leave this particular debit card in this drawer with this PIN number on it. So when they come through the house and they're going through the drawers, it's like, here's Dad's debit card and the PIN number's on it.
Don't do
not
that.
Like that.
Don't do that. Look, I promise you, if you make transactions on that account and he is passed, that is illegal, and you will pay for it later.
Oh wow, okay. Oh, we ain't leaving no debit cards in no secret drawer for nobody. We're gonna make sure we get that POD done.
Yeah,
quick, fast, in a hurry.
Absolutely.
Right.
But yeah, that's really good.
So
good.
earlier, I know we're getting close to time, but earlier we talked about GoFundMe.
Oh yes.
and I asked you, what do you say or how do you react when you see on social media, hey, we got a GoFundMe for Uncle Junie. He just passed away and we don't have enough money to bury him.
Yeah.
What goes through your mind when you see something like that?
And for me, because of the industry that I'm in, I ask the question is, okay, did this family go through something, just out of the blue that put them in a position where they could not pay for life insurance over a period of time. And then maybe that's why they didn't have coverage at the time of passing, right? Or is this a scenario where this person partied all the time and they had their money somewhere else and they discretionary always went to going out and going shopping and traveling and all these other things where they extravagant in other areas where thinking about leaving money to their families wasn't really a concern at that time. That's the first question that comes to me because of what I do. But my thing is, I want to pull them to the side as my first reaction. Let me help you with this. Of course, I'm going to give you some funds to help you with this. But at the same time, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Right.
And how do we position you where I know that this is mom passing, but are you going to go through the same thing if your dad passed? Have you started thinking about preparing for that? Is this a lesson learned for you? Is what my thought is. Is this a lesson learned of how we can avoid this in the future? Or it's just one of those things where you think that's the way life is and you can do a GoFundMe every time somebody passes in your family. How do you decipher the two? It's kind of hard to decipher the two if you don't know anything about the person. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what I found is that make the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
Make the main thing the main thing. There's always going to be something out here that's going to take your attention. It's always going to be a next event. There's always going to be a next outfit to be had. There's always going to be a new location to travel to. It's always going to be that. We don't know the exact date and time that our expiration date calls.
Right.
And for me personally, if the Lord said I need to go home tomorrow, I don't want my family in a position where they are doing fish fries for me.
Right.
Does that make sense for you?
Makes sense.
Or put them in a financial bind where they're cashing in credit cards or things of that nature just to put me away nicely. It's just not fair to them. Right. So if you think about loving on them while they're here and not just giving them flowers when they pass, it's a real thing.
I tell you what, Demetris, I really, really enjoyed you here this evening. I tell you, I enjoyed you when you came down for the entrepreneur class and you spoke to my entrepreneurs. But this has been really, really exciting. And I tell you what, you brought me some brochures, you brought me some cards. We have our annual Braidathon that's happening this Sunday. And it's going to be from 7 to 5 for those here in Huntsville area. I'm taking those cards and brochures down there and I'm setting them on the table because I want to make sure every one of those parents that come through, they know about you, they know about the services, they know about what you're able to do and how you can help them like this, because that's going to be important. You know, I figure with 400 kids, there's going to be at least about 350 parents that's going to come through. So I want to make sure they get this information, because I think it's important. They need to know. And we talked about breaking this curse, and we talked about how we start changing mindsets. Well, I guess we'll have to do that one student, one parent at a time, till we finally as a community come together and realize, like, hey, these are things that we have to start doing. These are things that we have to start looking at and making changes for ourselves. So, hey, I appreciate you coming in this evening. Thank you very much. Hey, folks, those of you all who's been watching, make sure you share this live with somebody who can use this information that Ms. Curry put out. It is very, very important that we understand it. That literacy part is the key. Understand it. She told me some things this evening that I didn't even know that I'm going to go ahead and make sure I act on, and I'm going to share that information with my friends and family, and also with my students and everyone who I come in contact with, to let them know about these things, because that's the only way that we're going to get ahead as a community. All right. So always remember, your yesterday is not your today, and your today is not your tomorrow. Good night.